ready?
Some say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Strangely enough, it seems that the way to better biogas is exactly through the same place. This renewable fuel is produced by microbes that thrive in the absence of oxygen. We close them inside sealed tanks, give them something to eat, and wait for them to release methane. But what might that something be? In our last episodes, we talked about how these microorganisms have the potential to change the way we power our world, and how the complexity of the bacterial communities that produce biogas is one of the biggest puzzles we need to solve for reliable production. Today, we talk about microbial food, because just like tiny microscopic gourmets, microbes will delight in some foods more than others. But combining what they like with what's available is easier said than done. For the next quarter hour, we ask ourselves how to find the best materials to feed the microbes that produce biogas, from household waste to dedicated crops, without forgetting leftovers from our own food system. Let's explore what microbes eat and why, and learn how to adapt to different circumstances and feed biogas plants sustainably and efficiently. Join us on a journey that will have us wander through the streets of Nazi Germany and find the connection between a ruinous past and a forward-looking future. Enjoy the beautiful, windswept fields of Finland, where a scientist, watching his children play, decided to turn waste into energy. Travel the world from Africa to Scotland and neighbouring Ireland to discover how whiskey is paving the way to a truly circular bioeconomy. You're listening to Fueled by Microbes, a podcast from the European research project Micro for Biogas. I am Joana Branco and I'm here with you today to discuss everything and anything biogas. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Let's go back to today's topic. Food for our microbes. The first challenge? Finding it. As with any living thing, it all boils down to nutrition. Microbes eat just about anything. But in the same way as it goes for us humans, for achieving different goals, some diets are better than others. For biogas production, over the last 100 years, many avenues have been explored. Home to almost 10,000 biogas plants, Germany has half of all the biogas plants that exist in the European Union. But the country's history with this technology is not new and has taken many turns, particularly when it comes to food for the plant's microbes. The summer of 1944. 4 years into the biggest war Europe had ever faced, the tide that had favoured Germany had already turned. After the Allies had bombed most of the country's oil refineries, with the Axis powers blocking access to occupied territories, and the Ploesti oil fields in Romania in the hands of the Soviet Union, Germany faced unprecedented fuel shortages. But they were not caught unawares. They had been exploring other energy sources for almost a decade. 2 years before the war broke out, on the 25th of September 1927, Benito Mussolini entered Munich triumphant to meet with his German counterpart, Adolf Hitler. At the time, this gathering of fascist leaders was described as a feast of flags. Millions of ostensibly enthusiastic Germans welcomed Il Duce. But under all the pomp and circumstance, unbeknown to most of the population, something much more interesting was happening in Munich. The entire fleet of municipal vehicles was running on engines fueled by biogas. Produced using the sludge from wastewater treatment plants, the process wasn't efficient, but on a small scale, it kind of worked. Today, we still face similar efficiency challenges. Organic materials to feed microbes, or, as they are called in sectorial lingo, feedstocks, matter.
Definitely, food waste is much, much higher than animal manure or feces or human waste. I mean, that's logical because, the waste that comes out of our bodies or comes out of the body of an animal is already digested. I mean, so certain carbon and the nutrients are already removed. And so there's less left in the waste to digest.
With almost 3 decades of experience in helping low and middle-income countries manage their organic waste, Dr. Christian Zerberg, the head of the Department of Sanitation, Water and Solid Waste for Development at the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science and Technology, has overseen the installation of his share of biodigesters. During the 90s, when he started his research, most European countries were busy developing systems for waste management and getting very much hooked on to fossil fuels. But in much of Asia and Africa, people were living under tumultuous political regimes, with little to no infrastructure available and the power supply as erratic as the international policies and markets. Many turned to biogas, but their problems were not our own. Until now, when we too must face the perils of energy insecurity. And in a world where organic waste has had established management protocols for decades, finding waste is easy, but that doesn't mean it has enough quality food for the microbes' tasters. This last requisite makes it an uneasy task. At the street markets of Africa and Asia, you can gather all you need.
The waste is practically 95, 98% organic. The energy content is much, much higher.
Not so in European cities.
The problem with using waste, or I would say organic waste from cities, is that it needs to be clean, right? It needs to be organic. And the biggest problem is that often the waste from households or from a city are mixed.
From various sources of plastic to pieces of broken glass, animal bones, even stones, city waste can be as varied and colorful as the people who have produced it.
So what you really need to figure out is you need to find either you need to have the people segregating the waste. So have a green bin or an organic bin and another bin, or you need to find locations that have organic waste.
Removing all the inappropriate content means a lot more work and more costs if separation at the source has not been done well.
People underestimate that challenge because they think, oh yeah, there's so much waste, and in the waste, 50 to 80% is organic. Yeah, that's true, but often it's mixed with other stuff. So, and sorting it through a sorting plant, that is very costly and very complicated. So it's then economically often not feasible.
Almost a century has passed since Hitler and Mussolini paraded themselves to Munich. Gerhard Link, chairman of the German Technology and Scientific Association for Gas and Water, is very vocal about the environmental benefits of biogas.
We need a gas with a lower carbon footprint, and this is, of course, biogas or other synthetic gases.
While the Germans of old faced serious shortages, nowadays it is estimated that 75 kilograms of food are wasted per capita in Germany every year. There is a dedicated brown bin to throw organic garbage, so the sorting part is mostly solved. And since about half of the municipal solid waste is food waste, there's plenty of good organic material to produce biogas. Yet, Germany composts most of its food waste. Why? It all boils down to convenience. With a territory that covers 357 square kilometers, Germany is the 7th largest country in Europe, and almost half of its land is dedicated to agriculture. Over the last decades, farmers took to biogas as a sideline, and the sector grew. However, these biogas plants were not built to use waste. They consume something called energy crops. The consequences are visible from afar. Large swaths of the countryside have suffered a maisification of the landscape. In a society that is highly conscious of environmental issues, 2.2 million hectares of monocultures of maize or turnips for biogas production are not seen lightly. Having a dedicated source of organic matter placed close to the biodigesters makes things simpler and cheaper. But it's not all sunshine and roses. Maize crops produce only half the methane yield achieved with municipal organic waste. Production at these plants is neither reliable nor sustainable, unless there is an emergency, which at present there is.
And we are recording this podcast at 12 o'clock GMT on Thursday, the 24th of February 2022, the day that Russia launched a full invasion of Ukraine.
Once again, and to everyone's disbelief, there is a war on the borders of Europe. And as happened before, not only Germany, but all the countries from the European Union need to find substitutes for foreign natural gas. With missile strikes hitting Kyiv, a plan was drafted. And as the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, explained last August, things must change. Fast.
The climate cannot wait. But now, the geopolitical reasons are evident too. We have to diversify away from fossil fuels. This whole approach is Repower EU. We are mobilizing up to 300 billion euros.
With the backing of the European Commission, no one is looking at expenses, but pouring money into it will not be enough.
European Commission was very fast to announce this 35 billion cubic meter target for producing more biomethane. We need a lot more feedstock to be utilized in the biogas process to meet the target.
This is Petteri Salonen. He's one of the partners of the Micro for Biogas project, and he knows a thing or two about the EU's plans and how to achieve them. Long time ago, way before the Repower EU plan came to be, Petteri's family visited a farm close to their home in Finland. He recalls his children were small back then and were running around the wheat field, hidden from view, if not for the moving stalks. He was there under the sun, watching them play, just letting the time slowly pass by. And that is when he noticed the wheat straw. You see, the edible part of wheat, the seed we turn into flour in our mills, is quite small, but the plant has a long straw that is not edible and usually goes to waste. That bothered Petteri. Why wouldn't anyone collect a straw and find a way to use it? In Finland, there is plenty of straw in the fields after harvest, but also cut down trees. By the roads, next to the railroad tracks, the wood from the felled trees is also seen as waste, but not for Petteri. For him, it was energy waiting to happen.
So the challenge here is that the availability of feedstock, like waste food, you should minimize the food waste, so it should not grow the amount of feedstock, it should go smaller. And also the side streams, less waste should be in food production processes. So we need to look at those inedible parts of plants where we can make biomethane from.
Wood, straw, any other fibrous plant material are grouped under a complicated name: lignocellulosic substrates. They are not human food. Actually, they are mostly subproducts of our food. So contrary to energy crops, they do not compete with our fruit production markets. But there's a catch. Eating wood takes a lot of chewing.
We have been studying the most difficult lignocellulose like wood. Lignocellulose consists of lignin, which is inedible for the biogas bacteria. They can't make biogas out of that. But then there is cellulose and hemicellulose, which is protected by these lignin tubes. The lignin is like hollow tubes, and the cellulose and hemicellulose are within these tubes and covered by these tubes.
This structure is a strategy used by trees to protect themselves from microorganisms. If a tree falls, its decomposition is a slow process, mediated by fungi and other species. If you grab dead wood and dump it inside the biodigester, the most likely outcome is that you'll just clog your system. But there are ways to work around this issue, as Petteri and his company Finrenner have found out.
With our technology, we break these lignin tubes with a high pressure so that there will be small microfracture through which the bacteria, biogas bacteria, can access cellulose and hemicellulose and start producing biomethane. It speeds up the process, so it takes roughly 1 month process time to get the biomethane from the lignocellulose.
In a way, it's a bit like when we eat vegetables. Would you eat raw courgette or raw aubergine? Doesn't sound very appealing, yet they're delicious when grilled, soft, tasting of smoke and salt. Bacteria also prefer some of their foods cooked, or pre-treated, to use the correct scientific term. And if we give them the hard substrates half chewed, good things happen.
Well, you can use straw, but straw takes quite a long time, 4 months, 6 months, 3 to 6 months probably for it to decay. So it's quite a time consuming, and you need a lot of equipment. We can shorten this time to roughly 1 month. So if you have a biogas plant without a pre-treatment, you get 2 or 3 times per year. You can load and unload this reactor. But without technology, we can do that every month. So it's roughly 3 times more effective biogas plant when you do the pre-treatment.
Not only that, but there are so many of these materials lying around that they could hold the key to surpassing even the EU's wildest targets for biogas production.
Our estimations based on these EU reports about the lignocellulose resources coming from agriculture, forestry, and also animal manure add up to close to 600 million tons of feedstock. And with our technology, we believe that we could get the conversion ratio would be like 20%. So from 1 ton of lignocellulose, you could get something like 200 kilos of methane. So in that case, if we were able to utilize all the feedstock for biomethane production, we could look at the 120 million tons of biomethane, which is roughly 170 billion cubic meters. So 3-4 times the EU's target. Of course, there are challenges of getting everything, and we shouldn't believe that we will get all the biomass, but the potential is huge what we could utilize.
Unfortunately, as with most things in life, there are drawbacks. Well, let's tone it down a bit. Drawback is a strong word. There are possible complications we need to watch out for. In 2021, the European Commission imported almost 138 million tons of agricultural products, costing 150 billion euros. At the same time, it is estimated that the same European Union wasted 153.5 million tons of food. Putting it simply, we wasted more food than we imported. Why have we circled back to food waste, you're probably wondering? Because sometimes good intentions bring about unforeseen consequences. Remember on our first episode, when we mentioned the first sewers built under London that had a potentially explosive problem? This is sort of the same thing. By using food scraps to produce biogas, we can give new life to a material that has few other uses. But we'd also be giving these wastes a renewable value. The danger lies in the possibility that creating an entire industry based on using food waste for energy can serve as an incentive rather than a solution. The same is true for wood. If lignocellulose turns into a profitable material for biogas production, there may be a similar pitfall that we need to avoid. The future would not be better if we ended up endangering our forests for the sake of having easy access to wood. We started this episode by talking about how low and middle income countries produce biogas. Most of their plants are small compared with our European counterparts, but they do something much better than our big plants. They feed their microbes with what's readily available and not valuable. By working locally, everything is right on hand. There is no competition with food crops, no use of dedicated arable land, no incentives that can tank effective strategies to reduce waste or promote the overexploitation of wood and other resources. There is also cheap energy available, and it works so well that similar approaches have started to pop up in some peculiar industries, those that use a lot of energy and also produce huge amounts of energy-dense organic waste. If you feel that Europeans drink a lot, your hunch is correct. People across the continent consume more alcohol than in any other part of the world. It makes sense then that we also have a lot of breweries and distilleries. What few people know is that these industries produce some of the most energy-intensive food items on the market. Whiskey production alone achieves record-breaking energy needs. It needs only 3 basic ingredients: grain, water, and yeast, But whiskey is not fermented. It is a distilled spirit. After the process is done, the result rests inside oak casks. But what about the waste? For a single liter of whiskey, there will be 2.5 kilos of solid spent grain, 8 liters of pot ale, a protein-rich liquid containing sugars and yeasts, and 10 liters of spent leaves, a watery residue. Some of it's turned into animal feed. Some goes to landfills, which costs money, and the liquid part is dumped into the rivers. It doesn't sound ideal, does it? With energy prices reaching historic levels, the time has come to become creative. Over a year ago, famous Scotch whisky maker Glenfiddich began converting its delivery trucks to run on biogas, produced on site. According to Glenfiddich calculations, the emissions from their trucks have been cut by over 95% compared to diesel. In neighbouring Ireland, distilleries and breweries are also embracing anaerobic digestion to curb their need for natural gas. Irish distillers, led by Jameson, announced June last year an investment of €50 million to turn Middleton Distillery, home of the world's largest pot still, into a carbon-neutral facility by the end of 2026. If you think about it, there are many ways to keep happy microbes and produce biogas. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation, and as we've said at the beginning, where we feed our microbes matters from a biogas production perspective, but also from an economical standpoint and an ecological one too. From household waste to dedicated crops, sewer sludge, even the residues of our food system, microbes can eat a great many things, and all will yield biogas. The trick lies in finding the best diet for a particular context and location. Locally sourced, affordable, sustainable. Following these principles, all kinds of industries are jumping on the biogas bandwagon, aiming to achieve carbon neutrality. What can the latest scientific research offer? The answer to this question on our next episode, an online panel discussion where we'll gather world-class experts to discuss our project's latest discovery, a unique group of microbes unknown to science until now, which promises to change the playfield of biogas production. Stay tuned to our social networks for more. Thank you for listening. See you next time.